Greetings. My name is Kim Gordon. I am with the University of Iowa, WORKSAFE, Iowa, and I welcome you to today's webinar entitled Ergonomics Climate. Our speaker today is Natalie Schwatka, who is an instructor in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health at the Colorado School of Public Health in Denver. With that, I welcome you to our webinar and turn the microphone over to Natalie.
Thanks, Kim. I'm very excited to be with you all today to talk with you all about Ergonomics Climate. So thank you, Kim, for inviting me to present to all of your audience. Like she said, I'm Natalie Schwatka. I'm an instructor at the School of Public Health here in Colorado, and I am also a researcher with the Center for Health, Work, and Environment at the School of Public Health. The work I'm going to share with you today is based on something that I started back in graduate school at Colorado State University while I was a National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health graduate trainee at the Mountain and Plains Education and Research Center in the Occupational Ergonomics and Safety program. As a trainee in this program, I was encouraged to participate in interdisciplinary work with students and faculty outside of my main program in ergonomics and safety. And one of the ways that I did this was to collaborate with the Occupational Health Psychology program. And the result of this collaboration was the development of the concept of Ergonomics Climate in an effort to understand how to enable workers to be safe and productive on the job. So before I begin, I would like to first acknowledge my collaborators on this project. Krista and I were graduate students at Colorado State University when we completed this work. She was in the Occupational Health Psychology program, and Alyssa Gibbons was her advisor in the Department of Psychology. And John Rosecrans was my advisor in the Department of Environmental Health, and his specific expertise is in ergonomics. And the work that I'm going to talk to you about today was just recently published in the Applied Ergonomics Journal. So I'd first like to give you all some background on what ergonomics is, what safety climate is, just to be able to set the stage for the concept of ergonomics climate. And then I'll tell you all about how we went about developing the ergonomics climate assessment and what we found in terms of the assessment's quality and ability to measure employee work-related musculoskeletal pain. Then I'll conclude with some so whats to consider in order to help you understand how the ergonomic climate assessment can be used in the workplace. So what is ergonomics and what is safety climate, and how in the world do they fit together? So how many of you thought of ergonomically correct chairs when you heard the word ergonomics today, or when you first heard ergonomics maybe many years ago? I'm betting that a lot of you did. And office ergonomics is definitely a key aspect to workplace ergonomics, and it's used quite frequently. But the field of ergonomics has so much more to offer. And ergonomics looks for all sorts of task demands other than sitting at a desk and working at a computer. They'll oftentimes look for workers who are doing a lot of reaching during work, whether they're lifting boxes, they're doing a lot of manual material handling, pulling objects, etc. And ergonomics is basically the study of work. And when we use ergonomics in the workplace, we're trying to reduce physical and mental demands placed on workers in order to improve their own health and well-being, but also to improve how work is performed in order to increase productivity. Professionals who use ergonomics in the workplace are concerned with achieving optimal relationships between workers and their work environment through work design. And the key word here is optimal. So professionals who use ergonomics in the workplace are trying to enhance employee safety, health, and well-being, but they're also trying to enhance an organization's productivity, their efficiency, the quality of the products that they're producing. Thus, ergonomics is a wonderful tool that can be used to not only help companies achieve their business goals, but also can be used to improve employee health. So ergonomics is essentially a discipline that focuses on going beyond safety to include employee well-being, their productivity, their efficiency, and the quality of product that they're producing. So now that you know just a little bit of background on what ergonomics is, I'd like to describe the second key concept that helps set the stage for the Ergonomics Climate assessment, and that's safety climate. Now, many people are familiar with the term safety culture. Some of you may even know safety climate and use it frequently in your workplace, but there's an important distinction between climate and culture. To some degree, safety culture is an elusive term, and unless you're an anthropologist, it may be hard to really define, measure, and influence culture. And this is because it reflects underlying values and beliefs about safety, and it develops over time as management and employees interact to develop common ways of thinking and reacting to safety. But we're more interested in the practical means of attempting to understand a company's safety culture, and we do this by looking at safety climate in the workplace. Safety climate is a well-developed concept that has a few decades worth of research behind it from a variety of industries. It reflects shared perceptions regarding safety policies, procedures, and practices. Safety climate are shared perceptions among workers. Usually work groups or companies will have a similar notion of how much safety is valued in the company, and it really reflects safety policies, procedures, and practices. So the focus of these perceptions are on organizational practices, not on each individual employee's safety behaviors. And the objects of these perceptions are an organization's priority of safety over other competing organizational needs. So I'm sure you could ask any worker out there, and they can tell you whether safety or productivity is paramount in their workplace. So safety climate perceptions really stem from worker observations over time about how safety is used or not used in the workplace. And so in some sense, workers are able to see or sense the pattern of how safety is treated in the workplace. And employers can use safety climate perception surveys as a way to measure safety climate in the workplace. So findings from my research and some others' research in multiple industries, from these findings we know that safety climate perceptions are related to a variety of other safety performance measures, such as safety knowledge, safety behaviors, motivation, and even injuries and near misses. And these relationships exist because employees who perceive a positive safety climate also perceive that safety is rewarded and supported on the job. And because of that, employees will be motivated to participate in the safety program. So in this way, safety climate measures can be a great leading indicator of safety performance. Indeed, many companies regularly use these kinds of safety climate surveys as part of their safety program, in addition to looking at other performance metrics such as their OSHA logs or their workers' compensation claims records. However, safety climate basically refers to the level of employee perceptions regarding the way that management and the organization values safety. And the main tenet of this valuation of safety is that they're perceiving safety over productivity. In order to have a positive safety climate in a company, this must be perceived by employees. While it sounds nice in theory, it may not be practical in many organizations. And perhaps that's why we're constantly striving to help organizations understand why safety is so important. We know that safety is a costly issue for workplaces, but sometimes it's hard to convince everyone that safety is worth valuable resources, and then it's worth more than just following OSHA guidelines and straightening up when the safety officer walks by. But it's not practical for organizations to focus solely on the safety of their workers, as productivity and performance are also important organizational goals. And this is why we believe ergonomics can help us to bridge the gap between safety and productivity, because we know that the use of ergonomics helps us to consider both the individual worker and the work in order to improve productivity and safety at the same time. So the question for us was, How can organizations convey their value for safety while still maintaining organizational standards, effectively balancing both safety and productivity? We recognize the need to help organizations understand the balance between safety and productivity. So we set out to find a way to do this, and we began to develop what we call Ergonomics Climate. And we thought that if it's been proven that companies do have a climate of safety that is tangible, that companies can measure, then companies may also have an ergonomics climate, and perhaps it's a better measure of a company's ability to be safe while still maintaining productivity standards. And in the same spirit of safety climate, ergonomic climate refers to shared employee perceptions of the extent to which organizational policies, procedures, and practices emphasize and support the design and modification of the working environment such that performance and worker well-being are maximized. And at the beginning of our survey development process to create the Ergonomics Climate Assessment, it was necessary for us to determine what ergonomic climate meant to health and safety professionals, ergonomists, and workers. 4 interviews were conducted with professional ergonomists that served as subject matter experts to discuss the concept of ergonomics climate. And from these discussions, we had some preliminary ideas about what the nature of ergonomics climate was. However, before moving forward, we wanted to get an industry perspective. So we had a couple focus groups at a large manufacturing company in order to discuss how ergonomic climate might be useful to professionals within that company. We had 12 individuals participate in these focus groups, including individuals from the ergonomics team at the company, engineers, union reps, and safety professionals. And the focus groups had an open format where the researchers, or we, let the participants guide the discussion about what ergonomics was and what it meant to them in the context of climate. And with this information from the focus groups, we also had interviews and offhand discussions. We also consulted a broad range of resources to determine how concepts of climate within occupational health psychology might be merged with principles from ergonomics. So we also examined other resources from the peer-reviewed literature in the fields of ergonomics, safety, and psychology. But we also drew from federal standards related to the previous federal OSHA ergonomic standard, as well as other standards related to things like OSHA's Voluntary Protection Program. And the result was the development of the structure of ergonomics climate that you can see here in this figure. So I'd like to walk you through the structure of ergonomics climate in order to help you understand the concept a little bit better. Ergonomic practices in organizations consist of making modifications to work tasks and processes to adapt to the worker, so essentially fitting the job to the worker. And such ergonomics practices may be implemented with one or both possible focuses, either a focus on improving performance or a focus on improving worker well-being. And these activities may consist of all 4 of these dimensions, like training and knowledge, or one where appropriate. Performance-focused ergonomics climate is organization-centered, and it refers to an organization's successful functioning in an economic context. So if a company is focused on maximizing their performance, they're going to be looking at maximizing productivity, efficiency, maintaining a competitive edge in the market, looking at their sustainability as a company, everything that they need to do to make sure that they're successful as a company. Worker well-being, on the other hand, is employee-centered, and it focuses on and refers to ensuring that employees are happy and healthy both physically and psychologically. And if companies are focused on maximizing worker well-being, they're doing things like trying to reduce injuries and illnesses on the job, addressing work-life quality issues, job satisfaction, and supporting work-family balance. The 4 dimensions on the bottom here are similar to what you might have seen before in the previous federal ergonomic standard, OSHA VPP programs, and the NIOSH Elements of Ergonomics programs. And all 4 of these dimensions refer back to ergonomic practices. So the first one here, management commitment, refers to management placing a strong emphasis on designing and modifying work tasks to maximize both performance and worker well-being. As I'm sure you all are well aware, in the safety world, nothing would be achieved if management was not on board. So it's clearly an important dimension here. The second one refers to employee involvement. And this refers to organizations perceiving to be encouraging and supporting active employee involvement in modifying work tasks and processes to improve performance and worker well-being. While it's critical to have management on board, if you don't involve your workforce, you're unlikely to see any of the OHS programs actually being used in practice. The third one here is job hazard identification and control. And this refers to active screening for and identification of potential hazards to both maximize performance and worker well-being, and engaging in efforts to minimize these risks through weighing the costs and benefits of potential solutions. And the final one here, it refers to training and knowledge, and this relates to giving employees training on the concepts of ergonomics and how it can be beneficial for them and the company. And training in ergonomics enables employees to understand how to apply the concepts to improve their performance and own well-being. So the Ergonomics Climate Assessment itself is structured such that there are multiple questions for each of the 4 dimensions that I just described: management, commitment, employee involvement, etc. And in order to assess both performance and well-being focused ergonomics climate, we have parallel questions for each. So, for example, one of the questions we have pertains to management commitment. It's displayed here on your screen, and it asks the worker to rate, in my department, my supervisor emphasizes the importance of designing and modifying work to improve factory metrics and worker well-being. And as you can see, the question is repeated for both of these focuses on performance and worker well-being. And they're right next to each other on the survey so that the worker can consider them both at the same time. And I should note that the reference here, factory metrics, in this question was used instead of performance because the manufacturing company that we were working with at the time felt that that term was more familiar to their workforce than the simple word of performance. So that's what we used with the company I'm going to talk with you about today. So to create the assessment, we started out by writing a lot of questions. We had 80 initially in our assessment, which is quite a lot of questions. And we piloted it first with 130 employees in the manufacturing industry. And this allowed us to really reduce the survey length quite substantially. 80 questions is way too long for any company to be able to use on a regular basis. So one of our goals was to try to reduce the survey length and in order to still maintain, validity of the assessment and usefulness of the assessment, but still being able to capture all of the necessary concepts that we needed to. So after pilot testing, we were able to remove some of the poor performing questions and reduce the survey length in half, and it's currently at 40 questions. So we then tested it with several hundred employees from the manufacturing industry. We repeated this twice. So in the first year, we had about 1,000 workers take the survey, and in the second year, we had about 700 workers take the survey. We surveyed everyone over the course of 1 week, and we were able to devise a schedule whereby we could actually travel to each of the departments and survey all of the workers when it was convenient for them. And we also had some salaried employees who worked in the office take the survey as well, and we were able to put it online for them to be able to take when it was convenient for them. And the survey contained, obviously, questions related to ergonomics climate, but we also included demographic questions, questions related to safety climate, as well as an assessment of their work-related musculoskeletal pain using the standard Nordic questionnaire that you can see on your screen here, where it asked about pain in very specific areas of the body. So I'll run through some of the results that we found with this company in order to give you all an idea for how the ergonomic climate assessment can be used. And I'll specifically talk about how work-related musculoskeletal pain and ergonomics climate are related. So the level of ergonomic climate at this company that we were at was moderately high. Overall, the average well-being and performance-focused ergonomics climate score was about 3.3 out of 5 on a scale of 1 to 5, disagree to agree for all employees, which shows that for this company, ergonomics climate was moderately good, but clearly there's still some room for improvement. And there are two other interesting things to note in this graph that I would like to point out. The first is that the ergonomics climate score for each individual dimension was relatively the same. So the scores for management commitment, employee involvement, etc., all held pretty steadily at 3.3 out of 5. And this suggests that the company that we were working with treats each dimension of ergonomics climate similarly. In other words, workers are reporting that their employers are doing things that display a management commitment, a willingness to involve employees, a willingness to do job hazard analyses, and an effort towards helping workers understand ergonomics. And they're not placing emphasis on one more than the other. The second thing that I want to note in this graph is that there is relatively little difference as well between the well-being and performance-focused ergonomics climate scores. I mentioned before that ergonomics climate represents a balance between safety and productivity, and our results indicated that workers at this company believed that there was a balance between safety and productivity. We also asked workers if they had experienced any work-related pain in the past 12 months in areas related to their neck, shoulders, upper back, elbows, wrists, hands, low back, hips, thighs, knees, ankles, and their feet. And as you can see in this graph, quite a lot of people reported pain in various areas of their body. Nearly 60% of those that responded reported that they had experienced work-related pain in at least one area of their body over the past 12 months. And of those that reported pain, the majority of pain was experienced in the low back. So about 40% of workers experienced pain in their low back. And also wrists and hands, where 35% of them experienced work-related pain in their wrists and hands. So now that I've shown you what the average ergonomic climate score was and the prevalence of musculoskeletal pain was at this company we were at, I also want to show you the relationship between these two measures. We were also interested in how they related. So in other words, we thought that workers who reported a better ergonomics climate score would also report less work-related musculoskeletal pain. Because if workers perceive that their organizational policies, procedures, and practices emphasize and support the design and modification of the working environment such that performance and worker well-being are maximized, then they would be less likely to experience musculoskeletal strain. So when we looked at the data, that's exactly what we found. Looking at the correlation between workers' responses to these two, we found that they were significantly negatively correlated, such that when ergonomics climate was high, work-related musculoskeletal pain was low. We were also interested in how this relationship might differ by the agreement or disagreement between well-being and performance-focused ergonomics climate. So the first question for us was, what if both are related highly? Does that translate to lower levels of perceived pain? We thought that it would. The second question was that what if one was high and the other was low? Did that translate to higher levels of pain, regardless of which one was higher than the other? We hypothesized that it would. However, because we know that employers who place a strong emphasis on performance over safety are likely to have poor safety outcomes, we also thought that if performance-focused ergonomics climate is high, but well-being-focused ergonomics climate is low, we might see higher levels of pain. And what we found was that when both well-being and performance-focused ergonomics climate were high, workers reported less pain. And that's exactly what we expected to see. We also found that if there was an agreement between the two, workers reported less pain. But what was interesting was that it didn't matter which one was rated higher, whether well-being-focused ergonomics climate was higher or performance-focused ergonomics climate was higher. The fact that there was some sort of disagreement between these two focuses resulted in more work-related pain. So what does this tell us? In general, we're seeing that ergonomics climate is related to pain. And this gives us some confidence that the ergonomics climate assessment is a potentially useful tool and a valid tool that can be used as part of the company's ergonomics program. Specifically, we're seeing that it's important for companies to place equal emphasis on employee well-being and performance, which is very much in line with the discipline of ergonomics, as you may remember from earlier in my talk, that ergonomics should be used to optimize the entire work environment to enhance employee well-being and productivity. And the consequences of not focusing on both may not be good. More specifically, if the stress of having to focus on either their performance or their well-being may create some negative consequences and stress. So we are really excited to find these results because we believe that the ergonomics climate assessment can be a practical tool for companies to use as part of their ergonomics program. Many companies use their OSHA logs, their work comp claim records, or even safety climate perception surveys to track how well they're doing with their ergonomics program. And I would like to argue that companies should also be including ergonomics climate assessment in their methods of managing the occupational health and safety program, because it can give them a good idea of what their employees think about ergonomics in their workplace, and it can be used to benchmark and evaluate ergonomic improvement projects. It can also offer answers to questions such as, how do all employees perceive the value of ergonomics at our company? What's our overall score? Is it good or bad? And then you can start to look at comparing responses. So do these perceptions differ between departments? Do they differ between management and workers? Do they differ between hourly and salary employees? Answers to these kinds of questions can help companies pinpoint ergonomic improvement efforts. For example, if all but one department has a great ergonomics climate score, you may find that you may need to focus your efforts on that department first when considering any sort of ergonomic improvement. And finally, we can also look to the individual dimensions that make up ergonomics to further pinpoint ergonomic improvement efforts. In the case of the company in our study, scores on all dimensions didn't really differ significantly, but let's just say, for example, they did. And we found that management commitment had a significantly lower score than the other dimensions. If we find this, efforts could be focused towards all supervisors and top management. They could be taught about the usefulness of ergonomics and why it's important for them to visibly and verbally support ergonomics within their own department. So I hope that you all have learned a little bit more about ergonomics and a little bit more about safety climate, as well as the new concept of ergonomics climate. And I hope that I've sparked your interest in using the ergonomics climate assessment to assess both employee well-being and performance-focused ergonomics climate related to things like management commitment, employee involvement, hazard identification and control, and training and knowledge to enhance ergonomics programs in your workplaces. So thank you very much for listening to my talk today, and I welcome any questions you may have now or later. You're welcome to contact me via my email here. Thank you.